All right, so this episode is being recorded Tuesday afternoon, prior to Game One tonight of the Eastern Conference Finals between the Pacers and Celtics. The Pacers are coming off a highly entertaining series against the Knicks that went 7 games, in which the Pacers were victorious in Madison Square Garden this past Sunday, whereas the Celtics are well rested after defeating the Cavs in 5 games. While I do think that the Celtics should win the series and are going to win the series, I think that it could be a competitive series. I won't go as far to say as very, but definitely competitive. This will be the first time the Celtics have been tested remotely these playoffs. And the reason why I feel that way, the main reason why I feel that way, is the style of play that the Pacers play, or their pace. No pun intended. They're an up and down team. I think that for them to really make this a series, realistically, they're going to have to make it a track meet, and I expect that. This team has been the number one offense all year, and they're going to be getting up and down the court. And I do think that this can possibly be not necessarily a problem for the Celtics, but it could cause some issues because the Celtics might try to match them pace-wise. And let's say if they have a cold night, whereas, they're not hitting their shots, particularly their three-pointers, then that's going to tip the scale in the favor of the Pacers for that particular game. And I do think that with Porzingis being out, he's definitely going to be out the first couple of games. We don't know if he's going to play going forward this series. I was always under the impression that they don't need him until the finals. It could get scary possibly in the series where you're probably going to need him for, let's say a pivotal Game 5. If the series is tied 2-2, heading back to Boston, you may need his services at that point. We'll just have to see how this series plays out. But Al Horford, I think, this is going to be a tough series for him, just because of this got to be year 17 in the league for Al Horford, up there in age, all the amount that he's accumulated over the years. To ask him to play in this type of series with a team that's run and gun, that's going to be a lot to ask for. So I can see scenarios where he's probably not going to be his role is going to be limited in the series for that particular reason. So that can definitely work into the advantage of the Pacers. And, of course, their bench was just great in the last round against the Knicks. Like to T.J. McConnell and Obi Toppin. They were great. They did their job and came in and stepped up and, hit big shots. Gave like a boost to the offense when they were in. So the offense didn't really take a big hit at all. So that's going to be plus to them. McConnell played great defense on Brunson. Was able to turn them all the way down the court, picked them up like 94 feet. But now they don't have their primary scorer isn't miniature, being the Boston Celtics. They got 2 long athletic wings in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. So that's not going to be a good matchup for McConnell. So obviously you see the likes of Siakam, Nesmith are going to have to, step up and be the primary defenders on those two, on the Celtics' 2 stars. Don't know if they can really contain them. You're going to have to hope that Jason Tatum, if you're a Pacers fan, you're going to have to hope that Tatum just kind of settles for what the defense gives them instead of being in attack mode, which is some of the criticism that he's been facing throughout the season. Well, for his career, I would say, Tatum just kind of settles a lot. Doesn't look to be aggressive, to be assertive, whereas that's the opposite of Jaylen Brown. So I think Tatum's going to have to really find himself early in this series to be assertive because I think they're going to need it. This is a series. I think this is the game. This game particularly, Game 1, I think the Pacers can legitimately steal. And I'm actually going to pick them to win the game tonight. As I mentioned, I think Boston's going to win the series. But I think Game 1, we can see the Pacers win tonight. And I would say because they have all the momentum. They just came off a Game 7 that was played Sunday, so they're still they're in form, they're in playoff mode still. Whereas the Boston Celtics have been resting for 5 days. I can see a scenario where Boston's going to struggle the first half, not really find their groove until the third quarter, and it may just be a little bit too late for them. And then they can capitalize the Pacers being in still Game 1. So I see a world where that happens, and I'm expecting that to happen tonight. But yeah, this is the game that they really gonna have to take to set the tone in this series because Boston did lose. Boston did lose the first two games in the game two, in their previous series against the Heat and the Pacers, and then they responded like great teams do, and just blew them out of the water after that. Essentially, those teams. This is the different beast though because of the offensive firepower that the Pacers do have. But Boston, Tyrese Halliburton, I think they're gonna have to do a great job of containing him right away because he is the focal point of the offense. It's initiated through Halliburton, who kind of struggled a little bit in the series, but found his rhythm. In Game 7, he was great against the Knicks. They have the likes of Drew Holiday. I would think they're gonna put Drew Holiday on him over Derek White just because of the physicality and the strength that Holiday possesses. I think that's going to be a good matchup. But you can rotate bodies on him. You can put White on him. You can put Holiday on him. You can put White on him. You can throw Brown on him. Tatum too as well. You can give him different looks throughout this series. Pacers they did score the most points in the interior in the season. That could be concerning for the Boston Celtics too as well. But as I mentioned, I think the Boston Celtics are going to win this series because everything has aligned for them so far in this playoffs. They were the number one seed for a reason, and they just have, I think, superior team, right? Certainly top heavy. Pacers probably have a better bench, but Boston is just so top heavy in this matchup that is going to have to tip the scales their way. Tatum, so far in the playoffs, is averaging, as I mentioned to him earlier. He hasn't. There's people who are complaining that or stating the fact that he's been played below expectations throughout these playoffs. Certainly, based on what we're accustomed to seeing from him, but at the same time, they haven't really needed him to be quote unquote great in terms of like putting out these great offensive performances and going crazy like we've seen him do in the past, right? But they haven't really needed him to do because the East has been so depleted with all these injuries, with the likes of Jimmy Butler in the first round. Then of course when they draw the Cavs in the second round. Spider gets hurt midway through the series. Jared Allen wasn't available for them. Then I believe Vanderbilt Vanderbilt or LeVert missed the closing game as well. So they haven't really needed much from Tatum. He's been very differential, getting others involved, doing a great job on the glass as well. So, I'm not going to put too much. I'm not going to overreact too much to his lack of scoring outputs that we were accustomed to seeing from him at this stage in the season, in the postseason, I should say. But I think that's probably going to change, and that's going to change this series. That he's going to look to be more aggressive, just because he knows what's at stake. He's like one series away from advancing to the second NBA Finals in his career, and it's a chance for him to rewrite all the wrongs, to exercise those demons, as he was, in his first Finals appearances, he was subpar to say the least. So I think that the competitiveness that's in him wants to, make amends and come back and show out in the NBA Finals, and he's one series away, so I think he's gonna, I think they're gonna do it. Jaylen Brown has been, great for them as well too, averaging so far in these playoffs 23 points, 6 rebounds, 6.5 rebounds. I forgot to mention Tatum's stats so far in the playoffs: 24 points a game, 10 rebounds, a little under 6 assists. So those are solid numbers, right? But I think with a lot of people who feel about Tatum, who push back on the notion that he's a top 5 player and say more so top 10, and because a lot of the guys who are in the top 10, rather top 5, are assertive. They can beat you multiple ways, and when it's time for them to come through in the clutch, they're going to look to make it happen instead of being differential and letting somebody else make that move. But man, if the Celtics did lose this series, oh my goodness, that would be collapse of epic proportions, because I just think that they are the superior team, even without the services of Porzingis. I think they're the superior team. They have to get it done, right? They just have to get it done, because next season you're going to have to start paying. You're going to have to pay Jason Tatum and the neighborhood of 350 mil. If Brown got 300, I would think 350 mil is going to come to Tatum's way. They did give an extension to Drew Holiday. I believe it was 4 years, 71 mil, if I remember correctly. So that's going to, kind of limit you financially at what you can do to improve the team if you weren't able to win the championship this year. So they probably maybe Derek White is going to get an offer that he can't refuse from another team. So you guys really capitalize on this window and don't let the moment squander away. It'll be tough, and you're probably going to see, if they were to lose this series, change with the coach, with Mazzulla, who was a young coach who has potential, but he kind of lacks the authoritative nature that was with Udoka before he was let go from the Celtics after all the his transgressions. So it's kind of like a night and day where, Udoka was holding players accountable. He was getting up in their faces. He didn't care. Treated everybody the same, 1 through 12. Mazzulla's more laid back, and there's nothing wrong with that. You are who you are. But when you know that your franchise had a coach who instilled, toughness and was demanding of his players, and they got to the finals, and then he had to be let go prior to the following season beginning. There's just some expectations that come along with that, which is whether fair or unfair, it's just what it is. So I think that would be something to look out to as well. But I'm going to say that I'm going to give a definitive pick. I did say I think Boston's going to win. I'm going to go Boston in 7. Prior I did say 6 games, but I do think that they are going to have some trouble with the Pacers and their style of play with the up and down track meet that's going to take place. I do think the Pacers are going to have I think they're going to have some outputs that are going to be that's going to hit them with a couple of haymakers that they can't really recover from. And I do think that we're going to see Boston Celtics struggle, I think, at least for 1 or 2 games from beyond the arc. And we know that when they tend to do that, it's just they lose, and they lose ugly, in an ugly fashion. So I see that happen again in this series. But ultimately, the Boston Celtics are too good. They have the top 2 players in the series do reside in Boston, I'd say. I mean, you could argue, is Halliburton better than Brown? Possibly. But I do definitively they have the best player in the series. Possibly the top 2 players in the series. Coaching advantage definitely does go to Rick Carlisle, who was I think should have been voted one of the top 15 coaches of all time. When he wasn't given that honor, I was kind of upset. But yeah, so I would say because of that, and again the Porzingis factor. Porzingis hasn't played basketball in a while, so it's going to be hard. How are you going to insert him into this series if he is able to come back midway? It's going to be hard for him to go from 0 to 100 against a team that is this fast and who loves to push the pace. And when the ball doesn't stick, they make quick decisions with the basketball. I think that can be bad for Porzingis dealing with a calf strain or coming off a calf strain. Knock on wood, there's a chance that injury can be re-aggravated, and then he'll be sidelined for the rest of the series. So because of that, I'm going to say 6 games. 7 games. Other than that, I would say 6. But Boston should definitely win this series and advance to their second finals in the last 3 seasons. All right, so tomorrow we have game 1 kicking off between the Mavs and the Wolves. The Mavs are coming off a great series against the number 1 seed Oklahoma City Thunder, in which they were able to defeat them in 6 games, whereas the Wolves in 7 games dethroned the defending champs Denver Nuggets. After being down by as much as 20 in the second half, roared back, fought their way back, and won. A lot of people, including myself, were shocked, but the Minnesota Timberwolves did it. Now they play a different beast in the likes of Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. My first thought about this series is the Wolves, while they are a great defensive team and the best defensive team all season, that was certainly displayed in games 2, 6, and down the stretch in game 7. They don't really have anybody that matches up with Luka. Nobody who's an ideal matchup with Luka. Oklahoma City had Lou Dort, who was tough, athletic, physical, strength. They don't have that in Minnesota, right? So who are they going to put on him? My best bet will be Jaden McDaniels. They're going to start off with. That's going to be tough with McDaniels. He has the length and everything, but Luke is just so crafty and so much stronger. He can get him in the post. They're probably gonna have Rudy be in the help position there, or he can fade away from the basket, hit some tough step backs, or take him off the dribble. Luke is just so great. I think that's going to be a tough matchup for him. He's dealing with some injuries. Not making any excuses about it, but he's finding a way to come through in pivotal moments. Just like in the previous 2 series, game 5s, he stepped up, stepped up to the challenge. Did it again in games 5 and game 6 against the Thunder. So I think that's going to continue in this series here. And Cat, I love Cat, one of the most confident players, and I think that's why a lot of people love. Sorry, I said Cat. I'm talking about Ant-Man particularly. Ant-Man. A lot of people love Ant-Man because of his confidence, the way he just oozes this charisma. After the victory over the Nuggets, and his post-game interview with the Inside the NBA crew, he did say that he wants to guard Kyrie. Woo! That is a lot to ask for. I mean, we've seen what he did with Jamal Murray in the second half, turned him over multiple times, made it tough for him and limited him. Limited him significantly from what he was able to do in the first half of that game 7. Kyrie is a different animal, man. Kyrie is one of the greatest players the league's ever seen in this position, and at his position. And I think that there's no way that they're gonna have Ant-Man be the primary defender on Kyrie. You want to conserve his energy, not get him in a situation where he finds himself in foul trouble. So that's probably going to go to, I'd say, Mike Conley to start off. But you'll see in certain spots, and certainly down the stretch of the game, you'll probably see Ant-Man guarding Kyrie. But boy, that's going to be a tough matchup for Ant, because Kyrie is amazing. Even though there was some games that he wasn't looking to be aggressive in this series. He's going to have to really be aggressive in this one, because he can get to the finals yet again. They're going to need all his help, because his defense is great. I forgot to mention that the season series was 3-1 in favor of the Wolves, but we should cite that was prior to the trade deadline. So since then, they did acquire Gafford and P.J. Washington to the Mavs, who have really just helped transform this Mavs team, made them a pretty damn good defensive club, and gave them more athleticism and length on their team, which is going to be needed in this series against this big front line that the Wolves possess. I mean, they had it easy in the first series, rather second round matchup with the Oklahoma City Thunder, who just lack size in the interior. They're gonna have to they're really gonna need Lively and Gafford to put forth even more of an effort to be fairly effective on the glass. Because with the likes of Cat, Gobert, Naz Reid at the bench, this Minnesota team is tough. It's gonna be tough to deal with. Ant-Man, who's gonna guard Ant-Man? Probably Derek Jones, I'd say, starting off in the series. You can probably see P.J. Washington guard him sometimes. But I'm going to look for them to try to, expose Luka or Kyrie on the defensive end. Probably get them in some pick and rolls to get the favorable matchup for Ant-Man. And Ant-Man's probably going to go to work, as he did throughout the whole series. Well, essentially, most of the series in the conference semis against the Nuggets. So that will be something that we should look out for, too, as well. But and Cat, man, right? Cat's somebody that I even tweeted after their victory over the Nuggets in Game 7. I really can't believe that Cat's going to be playing in the conference finals. Never in my life did I think that would happen, even with him being the quote unquote Robin or the secondary superstar or star, I should say, on this team. I don't really believe. I don't know if I really even believe in Cat. Great player. It's just his mind. Some of the decisions he makes, the silly fouls that he picks up from like 94 feet away from the basket. Not really like, just not like having his head in the game, being conscious of what he's doing on the court. I've always been skeptical about him. So I'm kind of I'm a little hesitant to say, like, is he really going to come through and again in the conference finals, where it's going to be, the lights are going to be shine more bright, and there's going to be, more scrutiny coming your way if they don't win, if you mess up. Can you really count on him? I don't know, man. I just don't see that happening. It can. He can hit some threes, shut out the defense. But what about and take advantage of the size in the interior, as well too. So I don't know. I just have a hard time seeing Cat being coming through 3 consecutive series. But again, hey, this mini team is different. Anything can happen. It is basketball, but I think I just gotta see it to believe it. But in terms of me making a pick for this series, this is going to be tough. You would say, everything would say, right, Minnesota, right? Here we go, the number 1 defense in the league, just beat the defending champs. You got a rising star, 22-year-old, who is going to be one of the faces, if not the face of the league in short time, in Ant-Man, Anthony Edwards. They got all the size, the length on the perimeter. It should be them, right? But that team, the Wolves, were constructed to defeat the defending champs, which they did. I don't think they were assembled to defeat the Mavs with Luka and Kyrie. 2 guys that on any given night can go off, and even together can go off. 2 guys who have never shied away from the spotlight, who have come through in pivotal games, pivotal road games. Kyrie in the finals in 2016. We've seen Luka last year, or rather 2 years ago, in the conference semis in Game 7 against the Suns. Put on the show. I know Luka's banged up. He looked, funny sometimes throughout the series. Funny, like, like hobbled, and it could have been like irritating him, his injuries, and he wasn't playing up to his usual level that we are accustomed to seeing him do in these postseasons. He's averaging so far 27, 9 rebounds, 9 assists, with a bad knee and a hobbled ankle as well. This is what Luka Doncic does. I'm going with the Mavs to win this series. I'm going with the Mavs in 6. I don't think that they'll allow it to get to a 7th game. Just seeing how they'll know that the likelihood of them, it's going to be an uphill battle to beat the Wolves in a Game 7 in their building and in a hostile environment. So I think that they are going to essentially close the deal and not let it get to that point. Kyrie is going to show up. Luka's going to show up. PJ Washington, who has at times looked like kind of made it look like they have a big 3 out there in Dallas. I think he's gonna hit some pivotal shots for them as well. I'm not sold either too on Mini in the outside scoring, perimeter scoring from the guards position outside of Ant-Man. I know Jaden McDaniels came in too clutch in Game 6 and Game 7. Alexander Walker did a thing as well too. Just don't see that. I just don't see them. I don't see that being duplicated in this series. And I think that the Mavs do have the better team. So yeah, I think Jason Kidd is gonna drop a game plan to kind of bother Ant-Man, keep him off rhythm. And, it's very rare that we see that stars in the league this young get to this point, this deep in the postseason. Ant-Man did it. Kudos to him. I believe in him. I think this is going to be one of many conference finals appearances that he's going to make in his career rather. But I do think that it's going to all end after this series. I got the Mavs in 6. So that means that we are going to have, I think, Celtics or Mavs Celtics series in the NBA Finals, in which the Celtics would be the home court, would have home court, as they've had the best record in the NBA this season. Mavs would be, I'm sure, heavy underdogs in Vegas. I wouldn't, me myself personally, I wouldn't necessarily consider them underdogs, but it is what it is. All right, so before I get out of here, I'll talk about a little bit about the Denver Nuggets. Right, as I mentioned them earlier, as they were dethroned by the Minnesota Timberwolves, a team that I thought was going to repeat this year. Which I said on multiple occasions, I thought that there was no way in hell any team could beat Denver in 7 games. I was wrong, but if there was any team that could do it, it would be a team that was constructed to beat them. Because remember, the current GM of the Wolves was the former GM of the Nuggets. So he had an inside track on them and how they built their team and was able to, to assemble a team down there in Mini that could compete with them and take them on. And they did. I'm still shocked just how that Game 7 played out. Being up 20. Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic. I mean, they did their part, but they were the only guys that scored in double digits that game. I mean, games like the last 3 few games, Michael Porter Jr. was just atrocious. I thought he was going to get back on track in Game 7 and be a pivotal piece of them being victorious, and that wasn't the case. Aaron Gordon, who has been relatively good, actually very good, I would say, offensively, the series was just a no-show in that game too, and then KCP as well. This team definitely did miss the services of Bruce Brown, and to a lesser extent, Jeff Green. But the team thought that they could just, rely on the young pieces that they have, along with Reggie Jackson off that bench, to fill the void that was Brown, Green, and that just wasn't the case. I mean, there was no way in hell that we were going to re-sign Brown because he was highly desirable to a lot of teams, and what the Pacers signed him for like a 2-year, $41 million deal. Nuggets weren't be able to do that. So yeah, they lost him, but they could have really tried to replace him, and they didn't. Instead, they have relied on the likes of Christian Brown, who was good, I would say, throughout the most of the season and the postseason. Just wasn't in Game 7, and Peyton Watson, who fell out of the rotation. A guy who they invested in heavily in the season, who was getting minutes in the season, playing defense, who has a bright future, just wasn't ready when the light shined the brightest. Yeah, so I don't think the Nuggets aren't done at all. They're going to be right back in the mix next season, but they're going to have to address their bench because we seen what happened. And then they had Nikola, Murray, Gordon, Jordan, and MPJ, and KCP just logging heavy minutes, man. They looked like they were just exhausted. Isn't even the word. If I could think of another word, I would say it. But yeah, they were just fatigued with all those minutes they were logging, and they were playing in Denver. It looked like the altitude was affecting them. A team that's accustomed to playing there, seeing that they play there 41 nights in the regular season. It was crazy. Yeah, so I think they're going to be back. A lot of people kind of poking fun just because I think a lot of people just don't like Nikola Jokic, whether it's the fact that he is an international player, there's no flair to his game, no athleticism, the fact that he's been an MVP 3 of the last 4 seasons, in which a lot of people this year felt that, including myself, felt like SGA should have got the award. I think a lot of people are using this his defeat in Game 7 to take shots at him. Nikola Jokic is great, still one of the greatest players of all time. I think right now top 6-7 center in the game, and if he does add more to his hardware case, it's gonna move up. Possibly can move in the top 5 spot, but we'll see. All right, so that is all the time I have for now.